Hi, I'm Kevin Weist. I'm Exhibition Director of ArtPrize. Thank you for coming to Critical Discourse. This is really a panel that I'm really excited about. We're calling it New Ink, Incubating Art and Tech. I'll do introductions of our panelists in just one moment. A quick note, the Rapidian and the Community Media Center is a media partner with us for Critical Discourse this year. We're doing a lot of wonderful things, including recording video. You'll be able to see this later online, as well as writing about these events, and also collecting your feedback. And they have a little video booth set up in the lobby out there. So please stop by afterward, share your thoughts, and be a part of that and help this content live on and take on new dimensions. Right now I'm going to introduce Sam Cummings of CWD Real Estate Investment, who is presenting the program this evening. He has a few words to say. Thank you, Sam.
Would you like me to sing or speak? Okay. It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. No. Anyway, I'm Sam Cummings. I'm co-managing partner of CWD Real Estate Investment, and because we sponsored this fine event, I get to speak to you for just a moment. So I don't want to say anything aside from I am probably ArtPrize's largest fan and probably the largest fan of the city of Grand Rapids. So it's particularly exhilarating and exciting for me to have these sort of conversations in our fair city, which is, about the intersection of creativity, art, and that thing that is called the city. So I am extremely excited about hearing what these folks have to say tonight about New Ink, especially as we continuously venture to make our city a better place to live, work, and be entertained. So that's it. We're grateful for this opportunity and extremely grateful for Christian, Rick, and all the staff at ArtPrize for doing such an extraordinary job of working hard 365 days a year to show off our city for 2.5 weeks. So thank you, and thanks for coming.
Okay, the program for tonight will be a series of slide presentations by our guests, who I will introduce, and then a kind of a moderated panel discussion following that, and some questions from you, the audience, as well. My introductions of these guests will be short because they're going to tell you a lot more about who they are and what they do. Julia Kagansky is the director of New Ink. She's a recognized cultural producer in the art and technology fields. She previously served as global editor of the Creators Project, a partnership between Vice Media Group and Intel, and founded the Arts Tech Meetup. Heather Cocoran is executive director at Rhizome, a leading international organization to support art and technology, online since 1996. Adam Harvey is artist and head of the Privacy Gift Shop. He's one of the inaugural members of New Ink. Harvey researches and develops art about privacy and counter-surveillance technologies. And our moderator this evening is Paul Moore, who helped start ArtPrize in 2009. He now directs communications for Start Garden, a $15 million fund and space dedicated to turning ideas into businesses. Welcome our panelists.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Raise your hand if you can hear me. Yes? I'm the moderator, Paul Moore, that impressive individual that was just described. Kevin Weist. That's a long route to get up. It felt a little weird. And I'm going to set down my things around these lovely orchids. I'm going to turn the orchid. I'm like, somebody's like, those were my orchids. They were on TV. That jerk. Turn them. I'm just going to put them behind the chair. No. Thank you all for coming out. I was telling Christian Gates I got to talk to these lovely individuals earlier today, and I told them this is going to be the best panel at ArtPrize, hands down. I feel like I'm showing a little thigh right now, but it's covered. I'm also blowing up on Instagram, sorry. It's true. Anyway, thank you all for coming on. All of these people are in some way associated with New Ink. I'm going to let you guys do your thing, but I'm going to do a little tease. One of these panelists is creating art that you can only find in the gift shop. One of these people is directing a program where museums are trying to create startups. A museum is trying to create a startup, multiple startups. And then one of these people runs a gallery that actually doesn't exist in the three-dimensional world. So, hopefully your interest is piqued. I hand it to Heather Cocoran.
Then I hand it to Julian.
And she hands it to Julia Kaganski.
Passing it
And
off
that's Adam
already.
Harvey down there on the end.
Yeah. Hi guys. Thanks for having us. How do I work this newfangled thing? There we go. So my name is Julia Kaganski. I am directing a new program at the new museum that's called New Ink. There's a lot of newness happening there. Really quick, for those of you who may not be familiar with the new museum, it's a contemporary art museum. It was founded in 1977, and at the time it was one of the first museums focused exclusively on showcasing contemporary art, which may be hard to imagine now that there was a time when that wasn't common, but that was the case. And it was founded with the mission of supporting new art and new ideas, and I think throughout its history has been really pushing the boundaries of how we think about artistic practice, curatorial practice, and what the role of a museum is today. So it's launched a number of programs over the years to experiment, and New Ink is kind of the latest such initiative. So New Ink is the first museum-led incubator, and we actually just opened 4 weeks ago on the Bowery in that building with the circle around it, next door to our beautiful sauna-designed building.
I love this slide because it's like, look at that iconic structure right in the middle of the
Yeah,
screen.
we're next door.
It's not that one. It's the little one over there.
Yeah, we occupy the second floor over there. And the museum's director, Lisa Phillips, and deputy director, Karen Wong, started thinking about this idea about 2 to 3 years ago. And it was inspired by a number of things that they noticed happening in the cultural landscape. For one thing, many of you may have heard this statistic that by the year 2020, 40% of the workforce is going to be freelancers. There was also a study that came out about a year ago from the Center for Urban Futures, I believe, that talked about New York City graduating more art and design graduates than any other city in the country, many of whom want to stay and build their businesses in the city, but don't necessarily have the resources to do so. And so Karen and Lisa started thinking of this idea of what would a museum-led incubator look like? How would it operate? And we kind of wanted to fill this gap that sort of exists between the artist residency model and the tech business incubator model. Some of you may be familiar with the Y Combinators and the Techstars or Start Garden here in Grand Rapids. And there was a whole wealth of artists and designers who were thinking and working more entrepreneurially, who were kind of falling through the cracks a little bit.
You're kind of taking from engineers in Silicon Valley who know a lot about coding and building physical products, and those are sort of where the tech accelerators exist in the world today, and you're bringing it over to Artland.
Right. Well, I mean, our space is focused on the intersection of art, design, and technology. So the way that we conceived of this program, it's a shared workspace, essentially kind of a co-working space. It occupies 8,000 square feet, and we bring together 40 full-time and 40 part-time practitioners who are doing a number of different things, ranging from wearable technology to video game development to motion graphics, data visualization. I'll go through a couple of more specific examples. And I should also note that unlike other incubators, we are a nonprofit. We operate almost like on a co-working model where people pay a fee to be there, but they also retain 100% of their intellectual property. And one of the things that we're really focused on is professional development, so providing the resources and the skills and access to information about business practices for creatives who may not have otherwise experienced that before.
Dazzle doesn't like prepare you for making money.
Surprisingly not, yeah. It's weird. They don't like to talk about making money. Somehow that is taboo in the art world. Oh yeah, okay, great. So we assembled an advisory council to help guide us along this process. We were really thrilled that some of the leaders in art design, tech, entrepreneurship were behind this project and are helping sort of guide us and also guide our members. Our membership community consists of 2 anchor tenants, Rhizome, which Heather will tell you more about, and Studio X, which is a program out of Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. They're kind of like an incubator within our incubator, and their program is postgraduate, so they're assembling a group of folks that are researching the future of the built environment. And our incubator, I'd like to describe it as having 3 kind of distinct models. So there's artists and designers who are sole practitioners building their individual practice. Then there's creative studios who are doing a mix of client work and their own self-directed R&D. And then there are folks that are building a product, digital or physical product of some kind. And many people are actually hybrids. They're somewhere in between. I think Adam's a perfect example of that, and you'll see why later on.
It's hybrid.
So artists and designers, one of the artists is named Raphael Rosendahl, and he's an artist who primarily works on the web, although increasingly he's doing more installation works. This is one of his website works, and he's been really kind of pushing how to sell digital artwork. If it's something that's immaterial and it's infinitely shareable online, how do you sell it? So he decided that he was going to sell unique URLs and create this contract where if you purchased it, you have to maintain the site, you become the steward of the website, and you have to leave it up. It's kind of like a public artwork, essentially. Then, we have artists that are doing more ephemeral things, so performance art, for instance. Lisa Park works with biofeedback data. So here she's using a fairly new device, which is an EEG sensor, which interprets her brain waves. It creates these kind of ripples in pools of water, interpreting them through sound. So there's speakers under these pools of water. And she's really kind of exploring her emotional state in these performances and using this these sensors to illustrate her corporeal state.
It's not for real.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting to see how artists can interpret technology that might be devised for a more pragmatic use case from a completely different lens. In this instance, we're actually seeing a photographer, his name is Carlo Vanderoor, inventing a new image-making technique. So he has been working with this 360 rig where he is working with really high-speed cameras, like 4K cameras, Blackmagics, and lighting rig that he's essentially capturing this moment in time, but the light is moving around the object. So you're seeing something that is not possible to see with the naked eye. So the object in the GIF here is frozen in time, but the light continues to move around it. And he's patenting this technology, trying to figure out what to do with it. Right now he's kind of exploring it for his own artistic practice, but it might have other applications. So that's something that we're trying to help artists think about, other ways that they might leverage the intellectual property of what they are coming up with and earn money from that, essentially. We also have creative studios in the space. This is a recent project done by a group named Party from Japan. They created the first 3D printed music video for Cut Copy, where they essentially did hundreds of these little 3D printed figurines and did a stop motion music video, and then they released everything all open source online, so you could actually replicate the video if you have a 3D printer.
You say replicate video, like as they're printing up the characters and then making their own videos, or they're okay.
So they released all of the 3D models, so if you had a 3D printer you could print them, and then they also released all of their instructions. Another studio that we have in the space is called Accurate. They're from Milan, and they essentially do data visualization, information aesthetics. They're kind of trying to figure out how to make data beautiful and meaningful, so how to tell stories with data in ways that are going to have an emotional impact for people. There's also studios that are...
Oh, God. This is the end. Okay.
Okay, so this is the work of Charlie Whitney, who does interactive installations. This is from a project that he did last year for the US Open. So essentially, it's using the racket as a paintbrush in a way. So kind of using the force of your swing to create these gestural almost Pollock-like paint splatters. And then we have some folks that are building products in the space. Sabine Seymour started this lab called Moondial Labs. She's been a researcher in the wearable technology space for the past 20 years, and she's actually developing her first product because, you know, the technology is finally at a point where you can create this very seamless integration into clothing. I won't get too much into detail on that because she's very secretive about it. This is a project called The Yorkits. It's by a really beautiful animator and storyteller named Andrew Sandel, and he's been creating interactive apps and books for children. He's really passionate about getting children to read, and he's working on a series of video games and a new interactive app for his second novel. And the last project I'll show is a group called Print All Over Me, which is a platform for users to essentially create their own fashion designs. So you can take pretty much any image from the web and print it out onto a garment. So they have template garments. They work with fashion designers. They're everything from onesies to bomber jackets to backpacks to caps, and they also work with artists and designers to create custom capsule collections, but essentially kind of democratizing the fashion world a little bit. And some of the programming that we do, we've been in our first month focusing on providing kind of like business fundamentals. So we did 3 seminars with a really great instructor who teaches at Sotheby's and SVA in New York, and covering everything from the basics of a business plan to financial modeling. We've also been working with a law firm that's like one of the top law firms called Wilmer Hale, and they represent like the Apples and the Intels, but they're also, you know, doing lectures on intellectual property and forms of entity with our group, and providing template contracts for people. So what I've been hearing from people at New Ink is that, oh my gosh, it's so refreshing to be able to talk to a live person about this as opposed to piecing this together from a Google search. And also to have a community of peers who they can explore this territory with, to have these conversations that don't happen so much in creative circles, about how to build a sustainable practice around their work.
So I mean, just so people know, like as far as accelerator programs or incubator programs for startups, I mean, you're looking at like the menu that they start with for all of them. I mean, this is, and it's not that you guys aren't doing something creative.
Sure.
I mean, what you're doing is you're bringing it to an audience of people that's like, this is, you know, mind-blowing, brand new stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, we're not like totally reinventing the model here. I think for our purposes, we were looking at a mixture of models from incubators, co-working spaces, places like MIT Media Lab, and artist residencies, and trying to create something that was maybe a mix of all of those models, but particular to our context as being a museum-led incubator. So that's it.
All right. Sweet. Thank you, Julia. You gotta live up to that.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's what I think every day. We share an office, so.
What have you got, Heather?
Okay, so yes, I'm Heather Cocoran. I'm executive director of Rhizome, and yes, the answer to this quiz was I'm C, the director of an organization that doesn't exist. No, we're we're an organization that has been affiliated with. We've been rather online since 1996, but we've been affiliated with the New Museum for the past 11 years. So we were in the left building there for 11 years. We've moved into New Ink, where we've been for 4 weeks. But yeah, for the entirety of our life, and really our real home is that one on the far right, which is the internet. We do a lot of things, or most of the things that your bricks and mortar arts organizations, galleries, museums do. So commissions, public programs, exhibitions. But we really have this central question, which is, as it says there, what's the possibility of an arts organization that has the network or the internet at its core? So we're really trying to think of new models for organizations kind of in the 21st century. So some of the things we do, just to run you through, we do commissions. This is a wonderful piece by an artist called Alexandra Domanovic. She made this kind of experimental documentary about the history of the .yu domain, which is Yugoslavia's former top-level domain that was actually active until 2010, which is obviously a long time after Yugoslavia as a state dissolved. So she did, and she's from that area, so she did a piece on that. This is another commission by Jeff Thompson, Computers on Law and Order. We commissioned him to watch all, I think it was like 460 episodes of Law and Order. And he screen captured every time there was a computer or a computing device in the show, so that he could chart the history really of computing through this kind of popular media. So it was both a really fun project, but also there was a critical dimension to it, because he was interested in how popular media can act as a database for culture, really.
I hear that conversation going. It's like, well, I can donate plasma or watch 460 episodes.
Yeah. And you can imagine the articles. It was like, what is our public money doing? You know. Anyway, exhibitions and events. So we do like IRL stuff. I should say, you know, our online. We don't consider online and offline as like binaries or two different spaces. We really have a nuanced kind of understanding of the internet as something that is like a condition. We're under like a network condition. So our relationships, the way that we're talking, you sitting in the audience, not only because you're on your phone, but just the way that we speak to one another. We're used to performing online, all sorts of things. So for us, our online and offline programs are kind of the same thing. We try never to make them online and offline in that binary way. This is a piece by Anne Hirsch that was a 2-person play at the New Museum about her experience growing up as a woman on the internet and the kind of her discovering sexuality through chat. We tackle critical subjects in kind of technology. This is a panel we did in a series called Internet Subjects, and we take technology topics that are in the news, and we gather a panel of experts and talk about them. So this was right when Uber was really exploding. There was a big, they had just been valued at like whatever it was, 20 billion. And there was some protests around Uber in the news. And so we were kind of unpicking, what is this sharing economy? Who is it good for? Who is it bad for? That kind of thing. We have an online journal where we write a lot about this work, and a lot about artwork and also, technology topics. This is actually a big program for us, but we do a collection in digital preservation. We have a collection of over 2,000 pieces of born digital artwork. So that's artworks that are made of code of various types, so software art, internet art, game art. About 5 years ago, we really started to get serious about how do you preserve this work? How do you preserve a piece of art on the internet when a server may go offline? we've made great progress in this area, and much the same as painting conservators or sculpture conservators, it is possible. This work isn't immaterial. It's not just in the cloud. It's on a hard drive. You can save it. So we really have been kind of working out exactly how we do that. And one of our signature programs is called 7 on 7. We pair artists and luminary technologists together, and we put them in a room for 24 hours, and they make something at the end, or during that process, that they present at the end of it. So this has been really popular. We have, just great people like the founder of Tumblr, the founder of Vine, compared with like artists like Ryan Shakartin, Taryn Simon, and yeah, they have just an amazing kind of critical conversation. So part of
like the founder of Tumblr is like, I'll go into a room for 24 hours with an artist. And
yeah,
make something.
well, it was before he sold to Yahoo, so it was like we get people like early days when because we know what's what, and and we grab them before they're so busy, but it's been one of our roles really is to help to bridge the tech world and the art world, and help to get them to develop languages that they can kind of move between. In all of this, Rhizome has been sort of integral, I think, to the growth and the definition of new media art, and in fact, we wrote the book on it. Our founder, Mark Tribe, wrote this book about new media art that kind of goes through the history. And we have really seen that the kind of future, the present, and the history of new media art, the artist plays like a really important role in the development of technology and digital culture. I think media artists, their concerns are both really prescient and kind of future-facing, but also they have this really great way of asking sticky questions and kind of getting into trouble. They have the ability to sort of step back and look at not just like what we can make with technology, but why we should make it and what kind of impact it's going to have on the world. So in short, they're like a critical voice that I think is really important in, as we look to the future of technology. So some of the kind of leaders in our field, this is an artist called Corey Archangel, whose work you might know. He's kind of one of the stars of media art and internet art. This piece, Super Mario Clouds, he hacked a Nintendo to remove everything except for the clouds that would float by. So it's a really sort of elegant, conceptual, almost like pop art kind of piece. But it comes from a critical point of view. He, at that time, was really interested in the Nintendo as a computer that existed in a lot of people's homes, and that it was one of the last computing devices that you could really understand on a kind of code level. Like, it was easy enough now, like unlike our computers now, it was easy enough that you could get in there and really figure out what exactly it was doing. So he was really interested in this like two-way communication between technologies and understanding how computers of various types like influence the kind of objects that we make. Super Channel by the Danish group Superflux. It really looked a lot like YouTube, really. They went into council houses in the UK and created community television stations that then would broadcast yourself on the internet. They had a number of groups of people, that, amateur video makers, but dispersing that through networks on the internet. So like I say, it's sort of pre-YouTube style. Nam June Paik is, of course, a forefather of media art in general, thinking a lot about the role of technology. He, of course, did a lot of work with televisions. This piece, Global Groove, was an amazing kind of simultaneous performance that happened around the globe and really looked a lot, or he was imagining a future that looked a lot like, one that was an internet future. So he was really interesting. He was also very critical. I think this GIF I love to show. I think it's hard to argue that he's not a critical man. This is just towards the end of his life. He's passed away now, and he was a frail old man. And he went to go meet President Clinton. And in his wheelchair, he insisted that he was going to get up to shake his hand. And of course, as he goes to shake his hand, his pants fall down, not wearing any underwear. And then to the day of his death, insisted that it was all of an accident. He just forgot in his old age to wear underwear that day. So he's a troublemaker, and for that, we love him and miss him. You can, yeah, it gets funnier the more times that you watch it, right? So artists are really asking all sorts of interesting questions and doing interesting things with technology. Some people may call them innovators, and while I think that that's somewhat true, and relevant to New Ink, in her book Network Disruption, there's a woman named Tatiana Bazzicelli. She argues that artists are more akin to disruptors, but they exist in this life cycle where the disruptions that they create become the innovations that businesses are built on top of. So to her, this is kind of inevitable, whether the artist wants it to happen or not. These kind of questions, these sticky questions, these problems that they throw out turn into business ideas. And so her argument is that artists need to understand that entire life cycle of their ideas and to kind of control it or to own it in some ways, so that the innovations that are built on their disruptions have the same kind of values, and that the disruptive parts of their ideas were built on, and for their ideas to have bigger reach. John Maeda, whose name I spelled wrong, sorry, John. He gave a lecture at New Ink last week, and so this is why I kind of included this slide. He said that design provides solutions and art asks questions, which I think is a really good one. But this one, I think, he says really great products have design baked in from the beginning instead of slapped on at the end. I think this is interesting, but I would argue that equally important, really great products should have criticality baked in from the beginning instead of slapped on at the end. So again, going back to this idea of not just what we can make, but why are we making it, what impact should it have, or will it have? So
I think criticality in every day.
You
my
what?
breakfast, just criticality, just throw it right
in the yeah. Well, you must have an artist tendency.
I totally do.
So yeah, I generally agree with that. So yeah, I think that for Rhizome, really, we're interested. We think that artists, again, have this really important role to play. So no matter, media artists in particular, especially for us, we're interested in. So no matter whether it's in the gallery or it's in the public or it's on the internet, we think that their voice is critical in the development of technology, and that's why we continue to support them and show them.
All right. Sweet. That is Heather Cocoran.
Thanks.
Unleashed. Unfettered. Baking in the criticality. Go for it. Adam, Harvey.
Thanks. And that's a good segue into what I'm going to talk about, because the art that I work on, which is about privacy and surveillance, is thinking about it in terms of how can you raise questions but also kind of complete the thought and provide an answer along with that. So for me, the art project is, like John Maeda was talking about, from the very beginning, it's thought out until the end result, which I'll show you a few examples of here. Projects that provoke a dialogue, but then force people to deal with that. The company I run is called Undisclosed. It's just a company because that's kind of what's required for running an art studio now. And the research and the artwork that I make is more or less about the aesthetics of privacy, which I think often are either put into a category of stealthy and black, or paranoid and tinfoil. But I'll show you two examples that are neither here nor there. The first one is a project that I began in 2010. It's called CV Dazzle. What you see here is a model wearing a CV Dazzle style that is made of hairstyle and makeup applied in a certain way that defeats face detection. Face detection is the first step in any automated facial recognition system, including the most advanced systems used by law enforcement agencies all over the world. This project ended up getting a good deal of press online and quite a lot of interest. What you see here is about 99 cents worth of technology. It's makeup, so it's analog, and anybody can have access to that. The cost of the technology that's defeating is in the hundreds of millions, possibly billions of dollars. Facial recognition is the largest growing sector of the biometrics industry. And here's that look again, a little bit closer. This is a project that was inspired, first of all, to raise a critical discourse about what's going to happen when facial recognition becomes even more ubiquitous than it is already. It's a technology that's built on software, and so it can scale infinitely. The cost to deploy it is almost nothing as software. Dazzle camo is probably one of the coolest camouflage styles that I've come across because it's very visible. It's a highly graphic style, and it's said that it was inspired by Picasso's Cubism. There was a tank that was rolling down the street in Paris. Picasso saw that, and he said, hey, that is my artwork that's been co-opted for military uses. And what's interesting to me about Dazzle camouflage is that it is very visible, yet it can be used to deceive your enemy.
Wait, so what are we looking at right now?
Right. The way that it works is kind of breaks apart the gestalt of an object and makes it more difficult to discern the directionality. For example, from a distance, the ship could become two, and it's confusing which way if it's heading left or right. So if you need to lead a round of munitions, it's hard to lead when you don't know how many ships or which direction it's moving in. Yeah, whether or not it actually worked, there's a lot of debate about, but another interesting thing is that it for sure boosted the morale of people on board the ship. Camouflage is psychological as much as it is functional, and when designing camouflage, of course, it's not going to work if nobody wears it. Now I'll go on a little sidetrack here. There's a very interesting kind of camouflage called chocolate chip cookie camouflage. I don't have it in my slide deck. The camouflage was deployed during the Persian Gulf War, and it looks like chocolate chip cookie dough. It's made to match the desert terrain, and it's very functional. The problem with chocolate chip cookie camouflage is that it didn't feel military enough, and so it was retired and later reissued to Iraqi soldiers. It's also interesting. The new camouflage pattern that we see with the pixelated camouflage is not so much a prize for how functional it is in terms of blending into the background, but more so in terms of it makes the soldier feel more updated with technology, with a pixelated look. So psychology plays a big role in camouflage. One of the other inspirations for this project was party photos and the types of creativity and eccentricity you see at club photos. This is the boombox scene in London from the early 2000s. And that's the style and the Dazzle type of camouflage that I use as inspiration for this project. These are two looks I created with this magazine. They did the art direction and I did the technical direction on these. So the way that these are working, you're probably wondering, that face recognition relies on key facial features, symmetry, and expected gradients of the face. So when you inverse those, or when you block certain key features, symmetry is required for a face, as well as a nose and eyes. So if you can obscure these features just enough, then the face becomes invisible to these face recognition algorithms. Last year I did a commission for the New York Times, and this was published and put in front of a lot of people, which was really great. I think there's a Tumblr that started where people are having anti-surveillance makeup parties. And so it's kind of trickled into culture where people are taking on this tactic, which is great. And I think a big part of that is you don't need any money to do it. You just need the information. And once you have that, it's all about your personal style. After that project, I kept following how surveillance technology was progressing and what new research projects by DARPA were going to eventually trickle down into the mainstream, which is what we always see happening with advanced technology. developed for military purposes that's also useful for state, local law enforcement. And this is an image taken with a thermal camera, which sees heat. And this camera is used very widely on military drones, Predator and Reaper drones. The way that it's used is to see your target in complete darkness. You can see through fog, smoke. So that makes it a very effective surveillance and military camera. And my concern was what happens when technology that we've developed that's being used in the Middle East comes home. So this was in 2012. Now drones are increasingly being used domestically, even military drones as well as in England. So, it's a bit speculative, at least it was in 2012. What happened with both CV Dazzle and this project is that science fiction caught up with reality. And let me show you a few other looks too. This is a burqa. So contextualizing the project with where drone use is happening at the time, imagining a new use for the burqa. The rationale behind the burqa is that it's a separation between man and God, and I see the items in this project as a separation now between man and drone. Okay, now this is a test for everybody. Somewhere in that picture is the model wearing the anti-drone burqa. And if you see it, you can raise your hand and guess where it is. I see next to the pillar. Yeah, you might be right. So nobody's guessed correctly here. Now you'll see the person walking.
So this was, we were chatting about this earlier today, and I was sort of pushing back, with concepts like, so if you see someone who looks like they came out of Edward Scissorhands, like terrorist, run away, or something like that. And you said something really interesting. You were like, 20 years ago, you could get away with the idea of if you're not doing anything wrong, then you don't need to worry about privacy, and that that's actually evolving and changing, so that it isn't so much are you doing something wrong? This is how you get away with it, as much as privacy sort of.
It's become a pervasive part of our culture. It's a hard argument to argue against, and it's been pushed by a lot of powerful companies as well as the government. It's something that John Ashcroft put into culture, that the idea that if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about if somebody's looking at everything you do. Eric Schmidt also took this stance. However, he then reversed that stance at South by Southwest this last year, because now people don't like Google as much once they realize that Google is spying and implicit in some of the NSA surveillance. And of course, to save their business, they're now adapting their language to fit that. That idea, I think, is now becoming outdated, that if you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to hide. The idea now is that, of course, you have privacy and you're entitled to that right to hide what your personal data and that. Let's see what's next. Another form of surveillance that affects a lot of people, and all of us in this room, is surveillance conducted with a mobile phone in terms of location tracking. What's really great if you're in surveillance is that it's a very uniform system, and being able to scoop up data on nearly every American is possible because there's a uniform way of collecting surveillance, that it all is digitized, goes through cell phone towers, and so the location of everybody in this room is available to anyone if they were to look at that. And that's really, you can use that information to begin to reconstruct someone's pattern of life and find out amazing things about them. I don't have, we can go into it, of course, I'd love to talk about the more advanced forms of surveillance that are going to be used for predictive modeling. Metadata is a pretty dangerous thing. It could even be considered a type of information weapon. When you have enough information about someone, you can begin to predict what they might buy, which is why Guild and Amazon are both looking at shipping you something before you actually buy it, because they know you want it. And what else can you do with that? Of course, predictive crime, thought crimes, things like that.
Well, and you, I mean, I don't know if people know yet.
But
all
I
this
didn't tell
stuff is
you,
for sale. You're showing.
Yeah, I didn't even tell you what this is yet. This black thing is a Faraday cage for your phone, so it's completely flexible. Little pocket, you put your phone in, and because it's made with metal-plated fabrics, it's impossible to penetrate it with any type of electromagnetic surveillance, Wi-Fi surveillance. So I turned that into a Kickstarter project and was able to raise enough money to get this off the ground. And after I did that, I thought these ideas that were speculative fiction are becoming products, and I could turn this into something else. So what happened next is, over the year, I noticed quite a few research papers that cited work I was doing, and these are SPIE is used for a lot of defense industry research. Over on the right, see it mentions the project. And this is a research project that was developed to defeat exactly what I had released earlier, Makeup Challenging Automated Face Recognition. And that's the Air Force General Counsel at the Pentagon who tweeted one of the projects that I did. And I mean, I don't even know why. I didn't quite understand why they're interested in that.
Are they following you on Twitter? It's not too stealthy if they are. Like, I know you're following the Air Force.
Yeah.
They're following.
I saw you.
They're following everyone. And then this email arrived, which requested publication rights for CD Dazzle in a classified intelligence document. And I was like, the Huffington Post doesn't even ask for permission to publish something. That's incredibly nice that you would ask for a classified document that I'm never going to see. So I obliged, because what are you going to do? But it made me think, I want to make these things as accessible as possible. And having it published in a classified document is like the worst possible place where nobody would see it. So how could I make all these things more visible and more accessible to people? And the idea was to create a privacy gift shop. The privacy gift shop is where I sell the items that I make that are somewhere between speculative and reality, that I put them into action. So if you are the general counsel at the Pentagon and you don't like it, well, people are buying it, so what are you going to do? And that's the conversation that I want to have, is to get that out there, excuse me, and see what happens when counter-surveillance technology is available. I put this slide just like everybody else.
Every single presentation has this slide
Yep.
with just a different circle around it.
It's good branding. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously we can. There's a ton of art to see. We've been talking about art, but the point of this panel is, like, you can see art all day long at ArtPrize, whatever you want to call it that you're seeing. But this panel is about basically businesses. Like, I see a lot of art, and I don't see a lot of business. I mean, I think that you're sort of now just tipping into like the gift shop, which is like, okay, I think I'm going to make money off of this. Why aren't we seeing, I guess, a lot of this? Like, why is this such new territory? What's new, I guess?
Well, I mean, I think we're focusing on this particular intersection of art, design, and technology, in part because it seems to be almost implicitly engaging with industry because the artists in this space are already working with commercial tools. So if you're doing an interactive installation, you might be using a Microsoft Kinect because it's got this infrared camera that allows you to create a 3D image of a space, and essentially it has powerful computer vision baked into this device that allows people to create interactive installations, right? And I think people working in this new media art space also maybe suffered from not having an art market for the work that they were doing, so they had to get a little bit
selling web pages.
Yeah, or there's not a lot of galleries or museums dealing in this kind of work, right? So I think they maybe got a little bit creative with how they were funding their practice.
Or that their skills were in demand, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
If somebody from a company, creative agency wants to make something cool for a brand that they're working with, then like they see some of this artwork, it's interactive, it's really colorful, it's fun, or whatever. Then why not turn to an artist to?
But also, I mean, some of the artists that we know, for instance, like both people at New Ink, but also people that in some ways inspired New Ink, or the way that I thought of New Ink when we were conceptualizing it. But like, say, Ryder Rips, who's an artist that Rhizome works with and the New Museum works with, who has an agency called OK Focus, and he primarily makes internet-based artwork, and he can code. And coding is a really profitable skill. So he sometimes does projects for Nike or for fashion designers like Kenzo. All of them have his particular aesthetic, his kind of view of design, always trying to push the mobile web space into new territory, experimenting with new forms of expression on those mediums. But at the same time, they're client commissions. At the same time, he's also creating room for himself to do his own self-directed projects because he's able to charge for the client-based work fees that allow him to take a month off or 2 months off or 3 months off to do his own projects.
Yeah. I've heard that called like the one for them, one for me,
right.
one for them,
I mean,
one for me model. But I mean, you're doing something that's
yeah.
This is all for me,
Yeah.
none for them.
Because I see a conflict here with this model, and I was doing this model before where I would, stagger projects
Just
and go back and forth
selling yourself
between them. But what ended up happening is when you do have time off, then you create work that then raises your profile, gets attention, that can then get you more of the previous work. So the time in between becomes, studio projects. There's a business name for it, kind of a loss leader, right? And so it all relates back to the business that you're doing. And I found that the only way to get out of that was to stop making work that only drove more of the commercial freelance gigs and to try something new.
Yeah, how's it going?
So far, I've been able to live in New York City, which is quite an expensive place to run a studio. And for me, New Ink is really a great place to be because you have so many costs in New York City that make it very difficult to be experimental.
Are you selling off-wallet cases?
Yeah, the off-pocket is the best seller on the gift shop, and I've sold now over 800 units of that, and I've sold a few items. Most everything from Stealthware is sold out right now, which is great. It was really a big experiment to see what happened.
Where is the Stealthware made at, just out of curiosity?
New York City.
Okay, all right. Stealthware, made in America. So
I think the Pentagon.
I mean, so you're going into like being profitable, and I noticed like there's the phrase sustainable practice is like the preferred phrase, which means like your costs are here, what you can get people to pay is up here. This space in between is now called sustainability instead of calling it profit. What's wrong with profit? Why are we, like, what's wrong with that?
I don't know. You know, I've heard people say when they describe themselves as an artist, they get less money for a job than if they describe themselves as a technologist or a designer, that there is some problem that's firmly rooted in culture that artists don't deserve money as much as a designer or an engineer. When in fact what we're talking about is that artists are also innovators because they're doing things that companies often don't have the freedom to experiment with and create new models of thinking, new frameworks for thinking about technology. It does have a lot of value. Mm-hmm. And I guess sometimes I just change the description of myself and to see the kind of location that I'm in. I think it is important to be profitable so that you can then use that money to create more work. So if it's only sustainable, then how do you grow? How do you make bigger projects? How do you go further?
And I think it's interesting, like we talked a little bit about how like, you know, inserting yourself into that commerce and that selling kind of market, it increases the people who connect with your work, you know, like by calling something an artwork, it's like this weird thing. But if you sell it and and it's like the privacy gift shop, it makes it accessible, kind of as you touched on in your presentation. It makes it accessible to a wide group of people who otherwise wouldn't understand how to, like I say, to connect with it. So I think that is also a really, really interesting part of artists doing that.
So is that one of the reasons like New Ink exists? It's more like stretching into different audiences and different types of way of generating revenue for artists. Is that a primary thing, or is it more?
Yeah, I mean, I think it came out of noticing a trend that there were artists and designers who were thinking and working more entrepreneurially, who were exploring these new models, trying to figure out ways to make a greater cultural impact through their work in a variety of different ways, be it through selling products or through, doing projects for corporate clients. I think what we wanted to do was to create an infrastructure to support them on the path to a sustainable practice. And the reason that I actually use the phrase sustainable practice as opposed to like business or profit or whatever is actually because the values that a lot of the people at New Ink bring to building their creative businesses are quite different than the values that a startup at a Techstars or a Y Combinator might have. So they're not necessarily motivated explicitly by profit. They're not necessarily motivated by scale or getting the VC dollars. Certainly there are some people at New Ink who are raising a seed round, but they're probably more in the minority than the majority. And I think it's about a lot of the folks there are just trying to create a lifestyle business, which is almost like a dirty term in Silicon Valley, where it's about, I have my studio and with 4 of my friends, and we're just trying to make a living and make interesting and fulfilling work.
Well, I think part of the reason maybe lifestyle business is a dirty word, or there's a sense of being motivated by profit, is because I think the average entrepreneur makes less than minimum wage for like some ridiculous duration of time, and it's like if you're going to put 3 years into something, ought to be something on the backside of that that's worth doing. But I think there's also, there's multiple things beyond, money that are driving, because it's a hugely risky thing. I think you guys are doing something also that's hugely risky because you're not taking the path. I mean, I was kind of describing it earlier, like it's kind of like, if you want to call it in business terms, like outsourcing your sales team. That's what going to an art gallery was, which was like the gallerist handles all the sales and all the connections, and they do all that stuff, and then I go into my pod and I do my creative thing. And it seems like you guys are, I don't know, colliding those two worlds, or trying to find new models, but that's not.
But I feel like, you can speak really, but I feel like the gallery system is changing too. A lot of galleries, I don't know what it's like here in Michigan, but in New York, they're closing down their brick and mortar gallery spaces. The bigger galleries like the David Zwirners and the Gagosians are doing these more kind of spectacle shows. The majority of the sales happen at art fairs. I mean, like, it's an evolving model, and if you actually think about it in the history of art history, like the gallery model is super new. It's like 60, 70 years old, really?
Yeah.
The way that it exists today. So, I don't know. Is it that firmly entrenched as the correct way?
And museums are changing too, right?
Yeah.
I think that one of the questions that we got when New Ink was announced, it was like, well, why is a museum doing this? Like, why is a museum having an incubator for creative practitioners of all different kinds to have this kind of space? Why are they dedicating resources and attention to doing it? But I think that the answer to that is really kind of in the heart of what the New Museum do, which is, they're always this thing of like new art, new ideas. They're really interested in contemporary culture, and I think that contemporary art actually right now in this moment is more than ever in conversation with different kinds of contemporary culture. The work that David Carpet Tumblr is doing is like shifting the visual conversation on the internet equally as much as like an artist who's making something really interesting as well. So I think that by having these sole traders or companies come into this space in like a co-working model, it's putting the museum into conversation with a culture that it wouldn't otherwise. And so I think that they're really also trying to innovate new models for museums.
Yeah.
And, I'll add to that, kind of similarly, having a gift shop concept attached to my artistic practice puts me in conversation with more people, whereas the gallery model, they become a barrier almost for me to meet the people that I would be most interested in meeting someone who takes interest in my work. And that's what I've been able to do with a lot of my stuff, and it's led to a lot of great new kind of collaborations that are forming on new projects. So for me, that's kind of one of the goals of my work, is just to find people who are also interested in what I'm passionate about, so that we can have another dialogue and make something.
Just to piggyback on that really quickly, I think it's also telling that you kind of launched Privacy Gift Shop to a certain extent on Kickstarter, platforms like Kickstarter that allow artists, designers, filmmakers, musicians to essentially create or validate an idea by amassing the funds to actualize it. Almost turn creators into entrepreneurs implicitly, because then you actually have to deliver the idea, send out the rewards, and how many products were founded on Kickstarter. There's like hundreds of them by now, and a lot of them actually fail because the business side of actualizing that promise, that idea, is something that the creators aren't necessarily equipped to contend with.
Yeah,
That
even the production side.
Right.
So you had to actually make something
Yeah.
to
The
send all
business
those
side
people.
and the production
Was it easy?
side are both tough.
yeah.
You just called up somebody and wherever, China, like it needs some.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
pockets.
whole new way of thinking about something, because you got to factor in user testing and customer service and logistics for shipping your warehouse, and pretty soon you're running a small enterprise service for people, and it takes up a lot of time, but it's kind of fun to communicate with people, and you get to see a whole different side, the business side of these interactions, which, I mean, there's some rich things about it, the conversations you have with people. I will say it is a lot of work, though, maintaining many things. You have the website, e-commerce, you have inventory, you have production, you have materials, and of course, I want to make new stuff too, so.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
running
and we were talking about
multiple businesses.
I was like, who buys this? And you're like, well, there's people that want to buy art, right? So this is kind of a very accessible way to buy art. And then there's also people, and I was joking around, like, libertarians that only want to live off of like silver and gold and don't use cash, and they, you know, have a cave in, you know, outside Denver somewhere where they're, you know, avoiding the drones. But like a pretty like weird spectrum of customers for you, as opposed to like the typical person walking in the gallery. Like, is the goal to kind of like squeeze those more into the middle, just getting people, like if you were to, you know, pick up your iPhone, pick up an off pocket, and then, you know,
No, I don't
have
want to.
achieved greatness there?
Yeah, I don't want to squeeze anybody anywhere.
You know, everybody has different ambitions.
And I think if I put something out there and then I get feedback on whether it's interesting, pushes me to make that idea into a product or not.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's somebody who takes an extreme approach to privacy, which I find kind of interesting to some degree. Yeah, I mean, I really like just the multitude of the types of people that come and value privacy that email me. I had a mother of 8 children who wanted to volunteer to help with the projects that I was doing because she felt so strongly about them and she had extra time. Yeah, there are people who take more like extreme libertarian approach, and you know, they're like much more patriotic sounding emails. Keep fighting the system. I'm like,
But,
yeah, I guess people take it in a different way.
but privacy is a mass concern now. I think that,
Right.
yeah, it's not something it's for like niche groups or, yeah, as Adam said, people that are doing something wrong. It's like in a post-Snowden era, like who's not thinking about privacy? If you're not, you're crazy. But like I think it's just, yeah, it's become, you know, even with the, yeah, all the iPhone, Apple leaks and trouble, you know, there's just so many stories now that where privacy is in the news. I think that, yeah, so Adam's going to have a swift business, I think.
So it's one of the cool things about operating online is that you never know who's going to stumble on to the work that you've been doing, and by opening up your project, so Rhizome is very well suited for this to a global audience. Who knows who may be interested in that thing? And I think that's what's exciting about art, is that you never know who's going to appreciate some weird idea that you have.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to steer toward the audience and say we're going to open it up for Q&A. But while your brains do that thing where they adjust, like, wait, I was just receiving information and now I have to like process and think of a question. I want to talk to you guys. New ink, like, I don't know, 10 years from now, what is it? What is, and the phrase that's coming to my mind is what does success look like, but I realize it's like businessy stuff. But seriously, what does success look like in 10 years? I mean, you guys are trying to do something that's not an artist in residency. Mm-hmm. It kind of feels a lot like an artist in residency. Like, what does 10 years from now look like?
Sure. So I think in terms of measures of success, the way that we've been thinking about it is making an impact on supporting and diversifying creative industries in New York. So hopefully some of the artists, studios, startups that are incubated at New Ink go on to be successful, go on to set up shop in New York, maybe even on the Lower East Side near the museum, and become part of this vibrant ecosystem. And hopefully we succeed in creating not just these individual startups that are successful, but a community that is larger, greater than the sum of its parts. So I would love for there to be an alumni network where 10 years from now, the first inaugural class of New Ink folks come back and mentor some of the new members. And I think some of the things that we're starting to see happen too is a lot of collaborations from within the different entities at New Ink. We really took care in creating a rich and diverse ecosystem of different but complementary skill sets represented within our constituency, and that was very much intentional because as much as we want to support the growth of these individual artists, studios, and businesses, we also hope that this environment will be fertile ground for generating new ideas. And I think, when you have all of these different creatives that bring their specific skill sets together, that rich discourse creates cultural innovation.
I know what's going to happen, and Julia's going to make this happen. She's going to kill it. Is that the tech industry is going to be more ethical, more diverse, more interesting as a result of New Ink. So yeah, that's what I think. That's what I think.
Thanks.
Well, and as a result of Adam, I don't feel as proud that I blew up on Instagram because the entire time Apple's been just
Now they know where we
tracking.
are.
Yeah.
I know. I even put a picture of it up on Instagram. So yes, questions, comments. Also, people, apparently this is going to air in Rosa Parks Circle tomorrow at noon. I hope you moved really close to the speakers because I noticed there's some, looks like homeschool kids that are playing music in the park, and there's a bunch of skateboarders and bicyclists, and there's also magicians that get really loud. So I hope you enjoyed this Rosa Parks Circle at noon on Saturday at ArtPrize. Yeah, thoughts, questions, scenarios, feelings? Yes.
Incubators receive criticism as generally unnecessary or ineffective at launching successful startups. How do you address that kind of criticism?
Sure.
Which incubators are receiving criticism? No, I'm just kidding. Continue. Yes.
I mean, one of the first measures of success for me, and this isn't a 10-year measure, so I didn't include it in my first answer, but I really hope that the people participating in New Ink find it to be an enriching experience in terms of giving them access to some of the knowledge and resources that they don't have access to. Thinking about, intellectual property, how to read a contract, the fundamentals of what a business model looks like, and whether or not the businesses that they came to New Ink with the intention of launching go on to be successful. I hope that they walk away from their time there with a feeling that they are better equipped to navigate whatever business context they might find themselves in moving forward. And so, being that we're a museum-led incubator, I don't know that we have the same metrics of success that other incubators do, so I don't know if we are liable to the same criticism.
And then also like the community at New Ink, which is a curated community, and the people that are drawn to it are traditionally underserved, I think, in this in the kinds
Absolutely.
of like professional development that the museum provides and that New Ink provides. So yeah, I think that's another.
It's true. In fact, we did an assessment of the other kinds of programs that are offering business training to artists and designers, and most of them are at most, say, a week-long like seminar workshop. So it is rather unique to have this year-long program where people have ready access to mentorship and information, and also peers to work through these ideas with.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Sir.
Hi. This is I am just going to compliment you guys because I think it's cool on a lot of levels. One, validating creative people in that there can be a sustainability to their creativity. Two, sort of allowing them the understanding of what sustainability takes, and that it isn't necessarily filthy to be sustainable, and actually call it the intersection of that. And one of the things that you said earlier was relative to well, I just had a little bit of a brain fart, but is that motivation of profit. And in my experience, it's the best businesses and the best creation of business is motivated by the pursuit of a vision or the pursuit of a disruption. And very rarely is it a successful business that is begun because some guy wants to make a whole buttload of money. Usually those fail real quick, or they make it once and then they fail because they want to try and do it again. And along the way, the sustainability of those businesses usually is because the founder and or the manager is pretty creative and understands how to turn failure, small failures, understands risk, and understands how to turn a small failure into another innovation or a disruption, and how to pivot throughout cycles and respond to those things. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I guess as one who is incredibly passionate about art and in some cases business and cities, it's very cool to see what you guys are doing.
Well, is that part of like what you guys are attacking, which is like the sort of sense of impurity if you want to sell something or make money back? Like we talked about the sort of one for them, one for me. It's like, well, I'll make money for them, but when it's my turn, I do it only solely for me.
I don't know if it's attacking. I mean, I like to think of it as empowering. Empowering artists and designers to be entrepreneurial and to understand how to navigate business relationships, how to have a conversation with lawyers. I mean, these are things that, even just giving somebody the vocabulary to talk about these things is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
All right.
Anything else?
One more.
Yeah.
For Heather, what motivated Rhizome to be an anchor tenant? And Julia, do you curate the group on an annual basis and then change that every year?
Yeah, so we have been affiliated with the New Museum for 11 years, and that was a result of our founder, Mark Tribe, and the New Museum's director, Lisa Phillips, sitting down at lunch when the New Museum was going to open this beautiful new building. And Lisa recognizing that as an industry, museums were lagging and they were kind of falling behind in terms of like their engagement with technology. Rhizome has had a head start. We've been around online since '96. We've been thinking about technology for a long time. So really bringing Rhizome into affiliation with the museum, which, by the way, we're a fully independent organization, but we have this very synergistic, reciprocal relationship with the museum where we could skill them up really quickly and add to their programs really quickly some knowledge about the most interesting artists working with technology. So after 11 years and being in an office with no windows, we're really excited to have moved next door to New Ink. I think that was our main motivation. No, we were really excited about being there and also helping to share some of that conversation and some of that history of media art with and some of the criticality of the media artists that I talked about, and curatorial leadership and all that sort of things with the people, the new members that are in the space.
What could you possibly be doing in 1996 on the internet?
It was artists. Yeah, they were like
what is there?
It started out as a mailing
list,
right?
It's a webpage.
Yeah, well, there was. I mean, you go to a webpage and it's not that different. It was a URL. There's a famous one of the earliest net art.
You're like, we need to bold that word.
Yeah. A lot of blink tags.
Oh, that's going to be like 5 hours.
There was there's an artist called Jody, and they made a very memorable piece of early net art where you would go to www.jody.org, and you would see this like mess of like letters on the screen, and it didn't really make sense. It was kind of flashing, and then you would view the source code of that, and they had drawn like a diagram of a hydrogen bomb in the code. And so it was only using text, but it was internet art. So yeah, they've been doing a lot since that time.
All right.
I think that's mine, sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Someone's phoning in a question. Can you phone a friend?
Is
that your phone?
It's yours.
You didn't put it in a Faraday cage? What's wrong with you?
Do you? Is it in the off pocket?
Yeah, I know.
Maybe he can give you permission
It's
to go
off
in
pocket.
and turn it on.
It's in my coat.
Do you want to get it?
Can you? Yeah.
Do you want to?
Excellent.
But you were talking
So
about the other question was how it's curated, right?
Yeah. It is curated on an annual basis.
So this jacket actually can't be seen by infrared cameras, but it can be found by your iCal.
By someone calling.
How'd your panel go? How'd it go? I can't find you. Leave your phone in that stupid pocket you made. Why'd you do that, darling? Mom needs to know you're okay. You live in New York, for crying out. Okay, go ahead. What was somebody talking?
Yeah, you were
What was
saying
somebody
the
talking?
curation of the.
Oh yeah, it's curated on an annual basis. The people who are in New Ink are in there for a year, and they have the opportunity to extend for a second year if they feel like they would like more time there. But in general, we'll be doing the applications process again probably before too long. I'm just like, oh man, we just opened, and now I'm like starting to think about.
ArtPrize, you'll get 1,500 applications in one day.
That's true.
But maybe the application process opens up sometime. Is that what I'm sensing?
It's going to be probably in like spring of 2015. Yeah,
All right.
Which is creeping up.
I know. Let's not talk about it.
It's coming really soon. And how many are coming in?
So we basically launched at capacity. We had 40 seats all full, and roughly 30 of the part-time members on board, and we'll be adding probably about 10 to 15 more over the next month or two.
Are you guys full now?
With the exception of the 15 part-time folks that we're going to add, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're 4 weeks old.
Yeah, no, we launched full. We actually had almost 400 people apply for the spots available.
Freaking New York. All right. So, any other questions or comments before we? Oh, this guy.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest opportunity to extend?
What do you think
Please
is the
speak
biggest
into the
opportunity to build these other experiences, support and partner with artists in this sort of work? Like, what are some crazy dreams that you guys might have around this? You know, for further models, building on what the model that you have, et cetera.
Sure. Honestly, we're too new for me to be able to answer that. Like, I would like to spend some time digging into this and getting us set up with our program, fine-tuning our program. We've been approached by a lot of people who have expressed a ton of interest in this model, in potentially collaborating, and we are experimenting with what that might look like. I mean, personally, one of the things that I'm really excited to develop over the next few months is potentially leveraging the interdisciplinary community that we've assembled for some sort of social good, social impact type initiative. So the new museum does this festival every 2 years called Idea City, which is a conference and street festival looking at the future of cities. And through that festival, it's come into contact with a lot of grassroots community organizations, people dealing with everything from urban systems to homelessness. And I would love to think about how we can galvanize and leverage the community at New Ink to think about some sort of civic issue and, prototype, spend a week or a weekend or however long developing ideas, prototyping things. So that's one thing that I'm really interested in developing in the short term. In the long term, I think I need a little bit more time to see how it goes.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Well, thank you all.
Thanks.
For coming up. Please thank our panelists.
Thank you.
So, where's everybody going next?